Record on this, and I'm going to hit record on my separate audio in three, two, one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. His name is Bjorn Ekeberg. I pronounced it right, didn't I, Bjorn? Bjorn is coming to us all the way from Norway. You're in Norway right now, aren't you?
That's right,
Yeah.
Sandy. It's a pleasure
Yeah.
to be on. Yeah,
Yeah, so Bjorn is the co-founder of Recharge Health and is pioneering breakthroughs in the wellness industry with FlexBeam. It is a targeted infrared therapy device that's transforming recovery for over 20,000 athletes and health enthusiasts. And I will say I have been using red light therapy for many years. We actually built a therapy room, this is probably going back, I think it's around 7 years. We were like, okay, what do we do with this space? Do we want to build a home gym? And we're like, no, let's build a therapy room instead. So we have infrared sauna, we have red light therapy. Back then, I didn't know about FlexBeam. And so I'm learning a lot more about FlexBeam. And today, we're going to talk to you about red light. We're going to talk to you about the benefits, what to look for in a device, because the space is getting extremely crowded. And this is really just to help you understand why you would want this. And truly, I can't imagine my life without red light. I feel like it's one of those necessary devices. So, this is going to be a really good conversation. And hopefully, everybody will, when they listen, they'll understand okay, I need this for this. And this is what I look for. And this is how I can understand why there's so many different devices at so many different variances in price and cost and usage. And it's getting confusing. So, I'm just so happy to have you today, Bjorn, just to clarify everything for us. And with that, welcome. Thank you for coming today.
thank you so much for having me on, and let's at least give it a shot to try to clarify things. I can also see the space becoming incredibly confusing.
Yes, but you know what? Like, let's face facts. It's the wellness industry overall is getting pretty crowded, and we kind of don't know. Like okay, like what's right for me? And everybody has their own personal story on what they need certain things for. So I always like to ask, what's your story? How did you get into this industry?
I didn't consciously get into it. It pulled me in. I can say my background is I did a PhD in Canada, where you're based, as well, and I had a career path that I was a philosopher of science, and I was educated in a lot of history and philosophy of physics and cosmology, which I've written a book about and have debated, and I'm often invited to discuss topics around that. Still, it was part of my sort of academic background, and I made a conscious choice. I wanted to be in the creative industries and build something and not be in academia. And then many, many years later, like about 6 years ago, two of my current co-founders pulled me, and I knew these guys from before. They were based in Asia. They were making hardware, electronics type things, solar cell lamps, and they were deep into researching light. And they told me they'd come across, like they showed me the research, like NASA research, and behind that PubMed literature on something called photobiomodulation, which is the sort of academic umbrella term for what we're going to talk about here today, like red light and near infrared light and ways you can heal yourself with light. And they were blown away by some of the studies that showed clear physiological impacts on at the cellular level from exposure to near infrared light in particular, and also red light for skin. And they were just blown away that it's like this is not something we'd heard about before, which it's also totally new to me. So they were in a position to make a device and like to actually design it from scratch, because they also realized when they researched this, like there are panels out there and there are lamps and like you can buy the stuff, but nobody seems to know about it and nobody's using it. And we figured the reason why is because it's really actually quite cumbersome to use it that way, and it's not really optimally designed. And we thought in the future, this is something that needs to be in every person's home. And the reason it's not there already, which is astounding given that there are decades of research behind it, is that nobody has made a device like good enough to use at home or something that really actually fits in. So that's what we set out to do. And we teamed up with a medical doctor who has worked in this space for 30 years with lasers and similar kinds of treatments and has always carried around a dream that this is something that people could have at home so they don't have to go to an expensive clinic like hers to get reactive kind of treatment, but could actually proactive and preventively keep themselves really healthy. So my part of it was marketing and storytelling and like trying to take this thing to market, trying to find an audience. And while we've been doing this and perfecting our sort of advanced, more innovative version of red light therapy, the space has just completely gone explosive. Like, and it's suddenly now something of pretty much every person I meet in North America, at least, have heard about it. Very few people may now have used it, but it's now a big thing. And when we started, it was very nerdy and nichey, and that's only 6 years ago that it was like its own kind of little industry. So it's a very exciting time. And yeah, that's sort of the background how I came into it. And now I'm all about trying to drive this kind of broader awareness that I think we need about what light is and how it heals, and try to make sense of this discovery and make it accessible to everyone.
I think that that's a good place to start, right? Where you said what light is. So,
Yeah.
you know, we get so much conflicting information. We get, avoid the sun, don't go in the sun. It's dangerous. It's going to give you skin cancer, but there's different spectrums
Mhm.
and there's a safe way to be in the sun. And how does red light therapy connect to the sun? Because we know every living creature needs light. So can you get into that connection, Bjorn?
Yeah, if we start at the like let's start at the macro level.
Yeah.
It's with the sun, right? Which is this like we have our own relationship to the sun in our culture, but I think we largely take it for granted. But it is the source of energy in our entire solar system. Everything that we see around us and ourselves are all based on the sun. It's like our plants that we eat get their energy from the sun, and the animals that eat the plants get their energy from the sun, and so on. And we do directly ourselves. The sun comes to us the way we measure it through physics, on an entire electromagnetic spectrum, as we call it. So it's a whole range of wavelengths that we've been able to identify all the different peaks and valleys of what is in the sun's total energy field. And that goes from the gamma rays on one side of the spectrum to like really minute, like longer wavelengths. In the middle, you have something called visible light, which is the light that we see, and that's only a tiny part of that spectrum. And infrared is in the heat section of the spectrum. It's invisible, but it's close to it. So that's just the broader context that the sun has all of it, and we're exposed to it all the time through our atmospheric bubble in our little earthly corner. But most of the time when we are exposed to sunshine, we get exposed to a whole range of wavelengths that are also off the spectrum of what we can see. A lot of that in the infrared range. Actually, more than half of the energy from the sun comes from infrared, which is associated with heat. So I just wanted to lay out like that, if that makes sense as a starting point.
Mm-hmm. It
So
definitely does.
this whole study of photobiomodulation, or how light affects our physiology, starts with some insights on how certain wavelengths seem to trigger certain responses in the body. And the standout here is near infrared light. It's in the spectrum of 800 to 880 nanometers, sometimes up to 950 if we're getting very technical. But where the body seems to, like, there is a cellular mechanism that starts happening that's been well demonstrated. And this light is something that we get if we're out in the sunshine a lot. But what red light therapy can do, and what we did in a concentrated device like our flex beam, is just having these wavelengths that are clearly associated with the healing response in the body, and just sort of isolate them so you can have access to them anytime. So it's more concentrated than the sun. But the energy in red light therapy and infrared light, it is the same as what comes from the sun. So that's why it's an entirely natural kind of solution. We already get this, but not enough of it.
Okay, so and not enough of it, I will say, because I think it's even worse now because everyone's like, "Oh, the sun, the ozone, we're everyone's gonna get skin cancer." Listen, I come
Yeah.
from a very different point of view where I try and get sun on my skin without sunscreen. Okay, really not right now because Toronto's like horrible. But even when you're out in the daylight, like I walk my dog every single day during the day, and I try and get the light on my skin.
Hmm.
Okay, there's certain situations, of course, like I'm not going to go and suntan and bake my skin, but a little bit of light is a good thing. So tell me why near is like, would you say near is the most healing of all the spectrums of light?
That's the one that's most closely associated with a cellular response. And the reason has to do with the wavelength, the length of the wavelengths, which is what determines where you are on the electromagnetic spectrum. So infrared wavelengths are longer than the visible ones we see. So they're too long for the eye to catch. But when they are just long enough, they penetrate the skin. So the infrared that you get from the skin, if you imagine that you, for example, face a beautiful sunset or sunrise or something, that glow, you see the redness in that moment, but you can also feel the sun's impact, right? On your skin, it feels warming. That warming effect is infrared, right? So even if you just saw a picture, but there's more to it than just that it's a beautiful color. Uh, that infrared, certain wavelengths of it can penetrate. If you have enough dosage or enough concentration, you can penetrate 2, 3, up to 4 inches in through the skin. So that way, you're able to reach cells in muscle tissue, into joints, ligaments, etc., and what's under the dermis and epidermis, like under the skin. And this opens up to an entirely different method of healing in a way, because you're able to expose those cells to something that they then react to, and there's cascading reactions at the cellular level and with blood cells and so on that is triggered. So this ability to actually go deep into the body without any invasive procedure, just through light, that is very specific to near infrared, and I think that's related to why that has such an effect. Most other wavelengths cannot penetrate, and if you go to a far infrared wavelength, for example, that is popular in saunas
Hmm.
currently, that wavelength is actually so far, it doesn't go through, it actually interacts with the skin and induces sweat, which is why people tend to like infrared saunas because it makes them sweat a lot, right?
Right,
So
which
there's
is
a very narrow window of wavelengths is what I'm after here that that has this ability to penetrate the skin, and that's I think the secret behind sort of near infrared therapy.
can it reach as deep as like organs? Like,
Yes, it can,
yeah.
if you are close enough to it and have the right dosage, right? So I'm sure as we're getting further into this, we'll discuss more around power and dosage and these like differentiating factors between devices out there. But
Yeah.
if you have the right device and you can put it straight on, like you can reach a kidney or a liver, for example, and shine a light there. And the reason why that is of significance for your health potentially is that your organs are the most packed with mitochondria, which is the organelles in your cells that are responsible for energy production. You have them all over your body. In fact, it's been calculated that 10% of your body weight consists of mitochondria, right? It's just like they are an enormously um, large part of your whole system, but they are unevenly distributed. And there's a lot of them in your gut and in your organs specifically. So, yes, targeted treatment is able to reach organs.
Yeah, you and I were briefly talking for for those of you who listen, you know I don't have a thyroid gland. Those of you who have been listening to my podcast for a while. And so it's different for me, but a lot of people who follow me have thyroid dysfunction. And I do know that certain devices, again, it depends, I guess, on the wavelength and the power, can actually help those. And we're not making medical claims here, by the way, folks. We're just providing educational
Mhm.
information. This is not medical information for anybody specifically who's listening, but I do know of individuals who have used specific red light therapy devices who have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid gland. Because, and I think one of the factors is exactly what you said, Bjorn, about the
Yeah.
mitochondria.
Yeah. I think that's the main established mechanism in the literature for the question, why the heck does this work? Or and then there's so many studies that show correlations between light, like using red light therapy and versus control group for certain various outcomes for pain and inflammation, muscle repair, recovery. There's a whole lot that is studied in terms of its benefits. But the cellular level, it's the mitochondria that seem to be the trick, and mitochondria are essential for your health, any kind of longevity sense as well.
Yeah. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, your mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. And we know that as we age, our mitochondria gets or can get more and more dysfunctional as we age, right? So it's pretty important that we keep these little mitochondria healthy. Um, Question. So we kind of touched on near, but what about mid? Because you hear near, mid, far. What does
Yep.
mid do?
There are fewer studies that show anything in particular around the mid infrared. I know there are various wavelengths that have been studied. The most intensively studied are in the near range and in the far range. 940 nanometers, I just saw a study on, would be considered probably still near, bordering on mid. Uh, from what I am able to understand, and again, I'm not the scientist here, I'm just trying to wade through the different information and filter it, is that the wavelengths then end up in a range that makes them less effective at penetrating,
Mm.
basically.
And far, I guess
No?
far is more of that whole body detox, sweat therapy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that would be sort of 11, 1200 nanometers and up and further out on the spectrum. Then the wavelengths are so long that they actually do not penetrate the skin, but they interact with it, as I was mentioning before. So they induce a sweat response.
Yeah. So I guess it has some benefit depending on
Mm.
what you're going for, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's more you get into the infrared, let's say the further you get out on the infrared spectrum, the more heat you generate, right? And heat therapy has its own uses, just like cold therapy and others. But when we're talking about near infrared and red light, we're talking about a specific modality that's able to treat in a way like you're stimulating your cells to be stronger and better at what they do, to be more efficient. And that's a completely different modality than applying heat and cold, for example, which can be beneficial for circulation. And there's a reason why a lot of athletes use it. But what's unique about near infrared light is this capacity to actually feed more energy to the cells.
So then it has, like, it would logically, it would make sense that, it's not a one and done. It continues, if you use it regularly, it's continuing to do good things for your body. Does that
It
make sense?
really does, and its consistent use over time is what will yield the real benefits. And I sometimes worry that a lot of the hype around the space and the confusion is coming from, all the marketing, like this, like relieve pain, reduce inflammation, get rid of this and that, and all of it, that it's the impression that it's just a quick miracle kind of fix and you can just use it for a half an hour one day and then it's fine. It really you need to use it over time. In some cases, you can get results very quickly, but mostly, and if it's any kind of issue you've had for a while, it's something you have to integrate into your daily life. And that's uh, actually where we started when we wanting to innovate on the existing red light therapy out there, was realizing that there, yes, you can buy a lamp or you can hang a panel on your wall and stand in front of it, but in order to get benefits from red light therapy, you have to be consistent in using it. And if you have a complicated or like it's a more cumbersome way, we know that compliance goes down, as in people stop using it over time. You know, we all go through that initial phase of the honeymoon of like, oh, this is exciting. I read about this new thing and I'm going to try it. And then after a while, taking off all your clothes and standing in front of sort of a panel for half an hour, like every night, it gets old fast. So our vision of this is that it has to be something that is in skin contact, close to you, portable, so that you can integrate it into any part of your day. And that's what we set out to do with FlexBeam.
Yeah, because I'm one of those panel users. And
Yep.
I don't at the start exactly like what you said. Like, you go, I feel like it's just not as effective either versus, let's say, I'm just going to give an example here. Just throwing this out there. Let's say you're somebody who kind of has issues with tendons, right? Like I
Yep.
actually know I have more of a predisposition to having tendonitis genetically, and I've had chronic Achilles tendonitis. I actually had to do PRP many years ago, and it worked. But I feel like when you have a chronic issue in an area, let's say you're a golfer and you always
Mhm.
have tendonitis. So this makes it easier versus and I personally know through experience that
Mhm.
when it's applied directly onto the body, it's just more effective because I have the
Yep.
panel and
Yep.
I have found that the panel is, sure, I might be getting a whole body effect, but when I need something more targeted, I've also used cheaper devices, Bjorn, and
Yeah.
I shouldn't, I'm going to say more economical. That's a nicer word, isn't it? But there's a lot of really, you're not sure if it's really doing the work. So, people who are looking for something that is proven, what
Mhm.
do they look for? Because we know there's a lot of these little devices that you can just put on your body that say they're red light therapy and do all these magical things. What do we look for?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to look for that are differentiating marks, I think, of a good device versus a not, or one that is questionable. But if we start with panels, like the comparison with panels, for example, there are many professional grade panels out there that really have great power output and have the right dosage. Like they're actually like really good panels. You might have one of those. Like we know most of the panels on the market. They actually all come from one of two factories in China that produce them, and then they're branded, and lots of people are competing with the same idea, basically. If you have the right LEDs in them and so on, you get the right output. The issue with panels has to do with compliance that you just talked about, and just over time it's more cumbersome, but it's also about effectiveness because you can't stand very close to a panel, like very close, and stick your skin close to it without kind of burning your skin because they're very hot. They also have a lot of radiation, like EMF radiation, for those who are watching that as well. And so you need to stand at a distance, and that's what they recommend. Also, the further away you are from a panel, I mean, only if you are 10 inches away from a panel, you lost something like 80% of the output, right? Because it's only effective close to the light source itself, but you have to stand away from it. And you have to be evenly away from it, which is even more difficult with a curved body and so on. So if you're standing up in front of a panel, your nose is getting more exposure than your ears, right? Just because of
Yes.
the penetration depth.
Yeah.
All of this is kind of it's physics, and it's just transforming like very strong good lights into a practical usage. And that's why we wanted to develop a different something you could wear on the skin and so on. The other differentiating factor, other than form factor for use, is power, which is the other part of effectiveness, right? So you need to have the right dosage. And our inventor's rule of thumb for this is if it doesn't have a fan, it's not strong enough. So any belt out there, any little pad or panel that has it can have tons. I have seen ones that have like hundreds of LEDs, right? Like little red diamonds all around. It looks like it covers a lot. Like we run that through our tests and our optical spectrum analyzers and measure the output. I mean, the total output is like a 20th of what a panel or a flex beam will have, right? Or like sometimes even just 1% of it is like it's mega ineffective. So from a pure physics perspective, you cannot apply that even straight on your skin and get more than just fractional kind of penetration because the dose is just not there. It's not strong enough. So that's the reason why you will find cheaper contraptions on the market, especially Amazon is like a sea of garbage that we see like devices that have all the same claims that it's associated with red light therapy. All of those claims associated with red light therapy are also, cleared by the FDA as a certain medical class status, etc. So there are things you can benchmark against that it's devices in this category are known to or are okay to say that it, heals in various ways and reduces inflammation, all of that stuff. But they're kind of free riding on the medical category with completely ineffective devices that have minimal output. So you may see some skin improvements, for example, by using something like a cheap belt type solution in that area. But any serious charging over your mitochondria, it's just not going to happen.
That is so important what you just said because I think I did a show on red light therapy, like maybe it was in my first year.
Mhm.
And I think that was what was missing. We talked about the nanometers, for
Yep,
near, mid, far. We talked about that, but you just mentioned the fan. So I have I have that panel that I told you about, and it has a fan.
yep,
I have your flex beam right here. For those of you who are actually watching this, this is what a flex beam looks like, and I've been using it. And I'll explain what I've been using it for in a minute. But I also have those cheap little belts because they're cheap, cheap and
yep,
cheerful.
yep.
So, but there's no fan. And what's really fascinating, so for anybody who's listening, you will see that they are FDA compliant because their little belt carries that proper whatever spectrum, nanometers, for the device to be classified. However, it's missing the fan, it's missing the power. You will not get the same um, bang for your buck, let's just say. You're not going to get the results.
That's exactly right. And it's about dosage. And I think it's the missing piece, even in the FDA compliance, because you're totally right. That it's associated with wavelength, and everybody talks about wavelength. And there's a lot of nerding out there about specific wavelengths and so on. And from all the research that we can see is that within a spectrum, it's all effective within a certain spectrum. What really matters beyond just being within this generally um, part of the spectrum that clearly works is really much more important is the output. So whether it's in optical power, like how many watts it gives as a total, and irradiance, which is a measure of how dense that energy is on your skin. That those are the factors that go into a dose. And dosage is one of those things that heavily researched, and I mean we can talk about also the different like there's ranges within which it's very effective that we can see, and it varies individually. But all of those sort of cheaper devices that don't have built-in fans, that means the light are not powerful enough, as and it's not out enough output in the light to cool them down, right? Like to be cooled down. None of those devices are able to give you a dose anything near what is being demonstrated as necessary.
to actually do anything that's going to be lasting in the body.
Yeah.
That's very
And
powerful for you guys who are listening. Just, if you're going to get anything out of like, and to understand, because it's so crowded out there in red light, just understand that. And of course, look at the wavelengths, but it's going to have the right wavelengths if it's saying it's FDA cleared, right?
yeah, it's a more distinguishing mark is the energy density and the dosage, like basically how much light is being fed, because that also determines the ability to penetrate, to put it this way. A weaker device will also not penetrate. It will not give you the dose, but it will also not travel far enough into your body and to hit enough cells to actually, for that theoretical energy at the surface to be actually taken up.
Yeah.
So, in a certain sense, the more powerful your dosage, the deeper it's going to go and the more energy it's going to give you. That being said, there's a different side to this where too much is also not a great thing. So, you don't necessarily want to grill yourself, but you just want to make sure that you are like within at least above that minimum threshold, actually a little bit above, but that it's powerful enough to stimulate more of your cells.
Oh, question.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned that, we don't want to grill ourselves, of course.
Yep.
It's just like you don't want to fry in the sun either.
Nope.
But are there any contraindications for anybody who's using a red light therapy device that is really powerful like yours?
Generally speaking, no. Like there are a couple of groups I'll return to, like specific cases, but generally speaking, this is what's kind of fascinating about near infrared light is there are no known side effects to doing too much, for example. What too much means is that your body adapts too quickly and therefore you don't get an effect. Now, that's a strange notion. We should maybe even linger around that for a second because
Sure.
the way red light therapy works or near infrared light works, it's through a response in the body that's called a hormetic stress response. So your cells basically they respond because they're being stressed into becoming stronger, to put it this way. It's the same principle as goes into something like cold plunging. It's the same principle really that goes into hard exercise, for example,
Mhm.
um, is that you are temporarily making your cells weaker and more stressed in order for them to bounce back. So everything, all the research on dosage is about finding there's an optimal window. It's sometimes referred to as the biphasic dose response. It is like a Goldilocks zone in the middle where you hit just the right notes. The body is appropriately or adequately stressed, but doesn't get so much that it can't quickly recover from it either. So too little we already covered. That's like clear from the weak lights, then no response. But too much just leads to the body basically over adapting and you're not getting the response you need. It's
That makes a lot of sense for me because I am like the queen of balance. I actually have a t-shirt that says it's all about the balance.
all about the
Um,
balance. And
it's
so is
all
the
about,
dosage as well.
yeah, but that's life. It's all about the balance in everything in life. So it does make sense to me because when I was really using that panel in my little therapy room, the big one, it said your body, there will be no benefit to your body if you use it for longer than 15 minutes.
Okay.
Um, and within, I think it was 6 hours or something, or maybe 8 hours. So basically, you could do it like in the morning and you could do it in the evening, and you'll kind of have that balance. If you do it anymore, it's really not going to benefit you. So it's kind of like well, you work with a lot of athletes, right?
Yeah, that's right. We have a lot of athletes and sort of biohackers and health professionals or ambassadors and use the device heavily.
So how do they use it, Bjorn? How does an athlete use it? How does somebody who's even still, because
Yeah.
most of my listeners are over 40. We're not talking about 20-year-olds who have a little bit more, resiliency and youth behind them, right? So if you're over 40, I personally have taken a little bit of time off from the gym. There's reasons for that.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a lot of people who are massively workout enthusiasts. So how do they use this?
So one of the strange or weird things about red light therapy that makes the whole space confusing, I think, is that the potential, like the list of potential benefits and applications is just so long that it almost sounds ridiculous. Like from we talked about pain and inflammation, muscle repair, and so on. And then the list goes on and on and on, and it's like it sounds too much. It sounds like one of those American infomercials from the 90s kind of. It's like, wait, there's more. There's this. Right. So, and we see this, we survey our users what they use red light therapy for, and it really is covers a whole range of different applications. But broadly speaking, I would say there are two main sort of ways for our device, which is portable or like a wearable. In the sports fields, it is targeted for injuries or prevention of injuries. That's why most of our soccer players, tennis players, golfers, and so on have embraced it. That has to do with the nature, the design of the device is that it can wrap around any part of your body. So it actually folds completely around an elbow or around a knee, for example, which means you get light from multiple angles. And as we just talked about, it penetrates, right? And it can penetrate from three different angles at the same time. You can treat deep into a meniscus. You can treat like into an elbow joint. So this makes it unparalleled in effectiveness for treating something relatively deep or anything targeted in the body. So for a lot of athletes, for any hips or joints or any targeted areas, I think most of us have some sort of spot in the body that's weaker or that is more prone to injury or that is maybe recovering from an old injury. So for any such uses, it's a very easy solution, so to speak, in that it's actually just you just roll it around wherever you need some of that extra attention and just blast the energy right there where it's needed. So that would be the sort of the most common use for anybody really. You don't even have to be an athlete to use it this way, but that's the sports angle.
Can I just
Yeah,
interject here?
please
So
do.
I think this is an important point because I have a lot of women who listen who are perimenopausal or menopausal or even
Yep.
past menopause. And I have a lot of women in my community who are not taking bioidentical hormones, and this is no judgment. It's just saying, it's not for them. And approve, okay, I'm going to say it this way, a very well researched point is that when our estrogen declines as women, we tend to get more aches and pains. Okay. So, and just like what you said, Bjorn, a lot of people have a weak spot. It's like that, like I know for me, right around the time I was beginning late stages of perimenopause, I started to develop problems with my wrist. And it's like my weak link. So, I will say this is an excellent application for women who have that weak link. And that can be whether you're on HRT or not. Like I'm on it, but because I have thyroid issues, that in addition to being in menopause, those two factors, this has been amazing for me. And then I also want to say there's amazing benefits for women who want their skin to look better too, right?
Yeah, which is remarkable, isn't it? That it also works for the skin, which we haven't even talked about,
No,
but
no, no. But
and which is exhibited.
I
Yeah,
wanted to mention because I know you're talking about athletes because that
yeah,
so many women who listen to my podcast are in my same age category. I want to mention I know a lot of women,
yeah.
honestly, that are my age. I don't think I know a single woman that doesn't have something wrong, whether it's frozen shoulder or problems with their elbow, problems with their knee, problems with their
Mhm.
feet. I like
Yeah.
it's amazing and I don't think it's talked about enough, but Flex Beam, I've been using it in, my little hyperthyroid state that I've been in for a while and it's really helped me, but it can also help women who are in a hypothyroid state, women who are in a perimenopausal or menopausal state. So you don't have to be an athlete to use something like this. I just had to interject there because I know that there's so many women who will go, "Oh my God, yes, I need that."
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect bridge or interjection for like between the two broad areas that we see of usage for flex beam. So the sports athlete driven one, it's really muscular skeletal, right? So it's repairing anything that is either your muscles or any joint, tendon, ligament, skeletal kind of function is in some way impaired. This kind of treatment is unparalleled for that, and that's why it's a no-brainer for a lot of top athletes to use, and then for people who are generally, but for anyone that has this kind of issue. The other broader category is what I would call a health category. That is much more about it's about gut health, it's about organ health, women's health. This is actually a big emerging issue from a lot of our users. Uh, can be used uh, against endometriosis and complications around this, period pain, cramps, menstrual cramps. It's been used for fertility as well because you can target a certain area into your ovaries with the light if you do it at the right setting. So a lot of these sort of more internal kind of uses that are health promoting. Longevity is a big thing as well. And then a lot of the uses are either along the spine or on the gut or directly on the organ. Uh, this is a kind of use that we are seeing a pattern among our users. It's very, very common. I think there's an increased focus and awareness around uh, our general state of health that you don't need to necessarily have pain in your elbow specifically from an event to be able to benefit from a targeted treatment like this.
That's amazing. So you can put this device on your belly just, just to improve your gut health in general.
Yeah, and in fact, this is now one of the most popular applications we have, and we designed this when you see the device you held up and showed to your listeners, anyone that wants to check it out online as well, you'll see it's sort of designed and optimized for like wrapping around a shoulder, elbow, etc., or anywhere on the body for musculoskeletal. What we didn't really quite expect was all these uses around gut health and organs and so on. So with gut health, there is a steady flow of new studies, and Dr. Zulia Frost is our medical doctor, who's one of my co-founders. She sends me sort of every week new studies that are emerging in this field. And in gut health, there's some very, very interesting one that show changes to the intestinal flora. Your whole microbiome is affected by the light, provided, of course, you can reach it with an appropriate dose. Um, but all the light receptors in your gut like respond to this light, and because your gut is so linked to your brain through the gut-brain axis or this neural pathway, it can also have cognitive effect for a lot of people. So we have special protocols for that, like how to improve your gut health over time with a device like this.
That's amazing. So, wow. I'm just curious. I wonder if there's any research, maybe you would know. I'm just top of my head thinking about this. Here in Canada, there's been so many people who have had this walking pneumonia. Like, I'm wondering if it would help the lungs, if there's any research there.
There's a lot of emergent research on long COVID and post-COVID type studies that show a definite effect in like recovery times for people. I myself was one of those, like, I got a really bad case of COVID a few years ago when it was finally hit me, in which it was really lodged in my throat. And I mean, I think I was advised to take all kinds of antivirals and crazy things, or just like trying all of these different things to try to keep this at bay. And in the end, it was actually my own flex beam that I applied as it occurred around like this and put one light diode straight on my throat for 20, 30 minutes a day, like really just the kind of aggressively going at it with near infrared light, just right where it was lodged. And for what it's worth, it was the most effective, like nothing else really helped it. But once I started doing that, it kind of reversed it very quickly. And we have a lot of use cases that suggest using it over the lungs can help with any respiratory infection or recovering from it. And the reason, again, like like why this makes sense is that you have a lot of mitochondria in your lungs, and you are able to, with a flex beam, you can actually reach into your lungs and stimulate them so that they recover much faster. In fact, Dr. Zulia just sent me a study yesterday that was doing this, like test control groups, randomized control trial, comparing red light therapy. They didn't use flex beam, but a comparable device with a comparable, like in terms of output and wavelengths, that really showed like remarkable results, like 30-40% faster recovery for patients in the long COVID. I'm happy to link to the study if you want to for your listeners. But these kinds
Yeah.
of results are kind of mind-blowing. But again, when you understand the sort of the mechanism how it works, it makes sense that it has a lot of these potential upsides or benefits for like respiratory type illnesses. So recovering from a cold, for example, much faster with a device like ours.
This is fascinating to me because I didn't even think about asking that until I was talking to you. I'm like, oh my God, like the lungs. Yes, so many
Yep.
mitochondria within the lungs. And a lot of times, okay, I I also had COVID and I don't know, it would have been like at least 2 or 3 years ago when I got it. And I had that the 6 or 8 week cough that never goes away.
Mhm.
And I never would have thought of red light to help with this because, just like I was given all the stuff, puffers, steroids, antibiotics, all that stuff. And truly, what helped was I actually finally started taking high doses of N-acetylcysteine.
Okay.
And then I resolved it kind of myself because I had to take matters in my own hand. I'm not coughing anymore, damn it. I can't do this anymore. But you know what? Does your website have a lot of the research on there, Bjorn?
Yeah, we have a scientific studies section in which we
Yes.
give abstracts, but we also link to the original study, so you can get at a glance look at the studies that you want, like that are more interesting for you. But there's a curated selection, I would say.
So I'm going
Uh,
to make sure I put, obviously in the description, I will have your website, but maybe I will also I'm going to have to remind myself, put a link to the link that is specifically for the research because a lot of people want to see the research. Now, in the
yep.
research, here's a question for you. So it will talk about the spectrum and the wavelengths, but does it also talk about the power part of it? Like your device actually has like output information, does it?
Yes, and you'll find it in most devices, and also in most studies, it's specified. If it's a serious study, it's specified the output, at least the irradiance or the density of the device. So that's usually possible to ascertain.
Okay.
Uh, I can mention in the COVID study I just saw, which is very recent, there was a 30% faster discharge from hospital for that group that used a comparable device to ours in terms of output and wavelength. Right, but they measured it against this pretty large control group. Uh, Measured it against antibiotic and physiotherapy. So one group got antibiotics and they got physiotherapy, and the other group got red light therapy. And the LED, like this treatment with red light therapy, was twice as effective on all the markers for heart health and lung health.
Heart health. How
Right.
does it affect heart health?
That has to do with the circulation in your whole bloodstream and the impact on red blood cell. I mean, the link between the heart and the lungs was also measured here. This is like pulmonary diseases
Amazing.
type studies and so on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so
So,
glad we uncovered this in this recording because I don't think a lot of people know this, Bjorn.
no, it was really fascinating research. And uh, again, the game changer here is like near infrared right light at the right dosage, right? I think a lot of the hype around red light therapy, and a lot of people hear about it now, is the red of red light therapy, which we haven't talked about yet, which has to do with skin. You may have
Yeah,
seen how
let's get into that.
cosmetic applications there are.
Yes.
And probably for a lot of listeners of yours as well, like red light therapy is maybe primarily they've heard of it through something like a mask or something like an application for skin, right?
Mm. But those masks, they don't have a fan, do they?
No, and they don't have any infrared light. So this is one of the most confusing points that we're faced with. So when you have a panel like you're using, and like our version now, FlexBeam, which is a more like a new and more advanced innovation on that, but it's basically the same output as a panel. It's just packed into a kind of a belt-like shape. Both of those, when we call it red light therapy, but it's really red plus near infrared. And the near infrared is very strong. In our device, it's particularly what we emphasize. But a typical panel and also FlexBeam will have both of those wavelengths. So red works for the skin and near infrared under the skin. However, this whole new mask sensation that has appeared and all the cosmetic applications that are all is red light therapy is just red light. So it only goes skin level.
Like just like
Now,
probably like the first, layer or two, it doesn't go deep enough to really make lasting change, would you say? Does that make sense?
I would differentiate it as that it will work on the skin. It will give you very nice and glowing skin, but it will not stimulate cells underneath the skin, or it won't have the effect that infrared light is able to give because it penetrates, right? So Uh, a mask can give you like a good mask will give you a good glow, so to speak. Like it will work on the skin because the red light is very clearly shown to improve collagen production and elastin production in the skin. And so there's a very good reason why it's sort of exploding as a phenomenon. What gets confusing is that it then covers over near infrared light, which is really the more powerful, deeper kind of penetration and more health benefits you get. So red light only is is really only works on the skin.
So, because I'm just kind of thinking because women my age,
Mhm.
we've got a few issues. Like we've got like the skin, we get melasma, we got wrinkles, but then we also got jowls. I'm making aging so beautiful, aren't I?
Hey, let's
But
be
it's
honest.
true.
I like it. Yeah.
But it's true, right? These are the
Yeah.
issues. And I had to do a lot of work to get my skin to where it is now.
Hmm.
And I had to, because I really didn't care much for my skin when I was younger, let's just say.
Hmm.
And also, it has a huge impact on your glow, how you look on the outside. It's always inside
Yes,
out, right?
of course.
So, so this to me, I'm just thinking logically. So if I just go and buy one of those really expensive masks, because they are expensive. I mean, I've seen them upwards of even 5 grand for some. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot. You're going to get probably maybe a little bit of fading of melasma,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like skin surface, but it's probably not going to work deep enough to help with like, that I like to say because I'm a big skin geek, getting that snatched jawline,
Mhm.
not having the jowls. Well, you need to go a little deeper for that. So it kind of makes logical sense that you got to go more with a more powerful light spectrum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. However, if you only have red light, you don't necessarily need to have extremely like high power necessarily because if it's close to the skin, what you want is to cover it as evenly as possible, right, with a certain kind of dosage. But the power is particularly important for near infrared because it affects the penetration possibility in there, what else you stimulate. So you're 100% right in that the being able to penetrate more deeply and to treat more deeply leads to better overall health, which then has its impact on the skin anyway. It's just that red light has its own like surface level effect as well that you can get.
See, I get it, like the red light, but I'm just thinking, it should improve elasticity of the skin too, right? if it's going to improve collagen, it
Yep.
improves elasticity, which would help with the gels. It's kind of like this, you know, wonderful downstream positive effect.
Yeah, like if you have both, it's the most beneficial. If you have near infrared and red, it's like you get deeper. But most of the masks and most of the cosmetic applications will only be red. And if
Okay.
they have near infrared built in, they will usually be quite sort of weak, right?
Okay.
What they have
So,
going for them is they're often designed for the face to contour around the face and so on they're easy to put on. So I know of some masks that really work. I also know of some masks that look similar, much cheaper and that don't work. And I'm pretty sure some of the highest priced ones aren't necessarily better than the mid-range ones. Right? So this is also a big markup territory. But overall, cheap masks also, from everything we know, don't necessarily work.
okay. So because I think we're almost at an hour, but I want to, first of all, do you have to protect your eyes when you use this? Like on your, because I haven't used it on my face yet.
No, I mean, as long as you avoid staring directly into the light for any long time, I mean, if you just close your eyes while you're using it, then it's totally fine.
Because I think I saw some research about if you use red light just with your eyes closed, it can actually help with things like macular degeneration. And it's actually good for your eyes, but not, like you said, staring right into it. Does that
Yeah,
make
this is
sense?
yeah, this is some of the more interesting research in recent years that have emerged in a lot of attention on how it could potentially reverse cornea conditions. It can be very helpful for macular conditions with red light specifically. That being said, it's more recent and the cases we've seen, it's more experimental and it's all very specific to dose. So be careful if you want to experiment this way. We don't recommend anybody like just using it like a regular muscle session and just do 10 minutes and stare into that's really not advisable because it's a very specific kind of condition.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
And again, we are saying we're
but it's
just
not
having a
dangerous. That's why I'm
right.
yeah. Yeah.
We're just having a discussion here. You have to talk to your own practitioner about anything that you're going to do that, you're not sure about and that might affect your health. So make sure you do that. But I want to quickly look at this because
Yeah.
your flex beam has three different options. Why is that?
Yeah, and it relates exactly to what we've been discussing now, the difference between near infrared light and red. So we wanted to give people an easy way to differentiate a skin treatment from a deep tissue kind of session. So we have three settings. The first one is skin mode, so it's primarily red light. So it's similar light spectrum as you will find in a very advanced mask. We don't usually promote it for the face because if you look at the way it's designed and shaped, it isn't really like it's really designed for like to cover on any kind of body part. But you can use it for your face if you just hold it, say, 10 centimeters away or something. You can light up your whole face and get a nice even glow. So
Okay,
you
so
can use flex beam for your face or any part of your skin, but often people are looking for something specific, like they buy a face mask separately.
you don't want to lie on the couch with it just like on your face. You have to hold it farther away.
I mean, if you put it, it's just the practicality thing, Sandy, that if you just crunch it on your face, you're gonna get certain spots of your face are treated, but not the whole thing.
Got it.
So if you can hold it at this kind of distance, like like to here in front, you will get an even glow around, so that your whole face will be
Okay.
affected. So it's totally possible to use FlexBeam for that, or
And
for
that's
setting
number
one.
one.
That's for setting one. Very often used, or like more frequently used, perhaps with wound healing or anything also on the body, like like for scars to heal faster, etc. Then you want the surface setting with maximum red light and a little bit of near infrared to get sort of just into the epidermis, but not more.
Okay.
Setting two is comparable to what you have in your panel, I believe, which is equal amounts of red and near infrared. They're both these bandwidths at the same time and both quite strong. So that's the medium, like that's the center option. If you're ever in doubt, it's never really wrong. You can always use setting 2. And then we have setting 3, which is our particular innovation, is we just maximize the near infrared. And we have just a little bit of red so that you get conduction of light all the way through the skin and also skin sort of reaction to it. But it's really the whole thing is that it goes deeper. So we call that the deep tissue kind of treatment. That's what you would use if you need, for example, to treat into a joint,
Okay,
right? That will have a deeper penetration.
I guess, or if you want to do a little bit of, gut health work, you want to use number three because you want to have it a little deeper, right?
Yes. 2 will also work because it will penetrate and give more on the skin level and a little bit further in, but 3 will go the deepest. So yeah, reaching more deeply in, or if there's an organ you're trying to target for a few minutes or something like this, then setting 3 is probably the most popular setting on the device,
Mm.
and which is quite unique for red light therapy devices as well to have an infrared or predominantly near infrared setting.
I'm just thinking. See, this is my brain turning. I'm like, I'm just thinking this would be great for saggy skin on your abs too.
Yeah, I think then
Or
you want to use setting 2, which has more red light in it as well, and you get then a more sort of um, complete range of treatment from the skin level and in.
yeah, yeah. You must think I'm so shallow. I'm really interested in the aesthetics. So
Not at all, and a lot of our users are, and of course it's I mean we're talking about so many potential benefits and applications, and it's a targeted device. I mean sometimes maybe the biggest challenge is where do you want to start and treat first? Because you can't do everything at the same time and all day around either for it to be effective.
yeah, no, this is such a great conversation. We covered so much. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to mention before we close off?
I think we covered the most important parts around now. Let's see, wavelengths and dosage and how to differentiate different devices. And I hope this was helpful to bring some sort of clarity on some of those issues. And I think for anyone who's eager to check out more, we have a website, recharge.health. This is where we also sell FlexBeam, which is our device. So you can either search for FlexBeam or go to recharge.health. We have lots of scientific studies and more background information for anyone that wants to deep dive a bit more and learn about specifics. We have also introduced a membership program that's guided by our doctor, medical doctor. So we have a space, there's a free space that you can access with protocols for specific things like gut health, immune support, all of those different things that are our doctor's specific guidelines for how to get the most out of your device, like how often to use and where, and so on to personalize it. And this is also, I think, a differentiator for us in the space. We want to innovate on the device itself, but it's really about education and making sure that people understand and that they can use it properly. And then new uses are also invented as we go along. I mean, the stuff about gut health and some of the glands that we talked about, we didn't really have this in mind when we designed it. And we discovered our users are reporting back, hey, it's amazing for my liver, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, but that makes sense. And then we make a liver support protocol for it, etc.
Oh,
So
I love
we are
that.
also evolving this as part of the business, and soon we will also have an app that makes it easier for people to get the guidelines straight on their phone. So I encourage you to have a look there and to check out some of those features, and especially around the education of it.
This has been such a great and, very, I think we uncovered some different things in this conversation than the usual, which is what I always like to do. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It was a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I hit stop there.